Before writing the script, I looked at my POCO X6 Pro review and honestly surprised at how excited I was. Because let me be honest with you, I wasn't too excited with this year's spec sheet of the X7 Pro. But like I said in the title, it's better in every important metrics, which is a pleasant surprise. So without further ado, let's get started. Selamat pagi. Good morning everyone, Kenneth here and welcome to my POCO X7 Pro review. This time my parent bought one, so I cannot miss the moment and have to review it ASAP. I really hope I can connect with POCO once again, so if you could help me send their social media a DM to let them know, it would be very helpful. And of course my affiliate links are in the description to support the channel. Thank you very much. Alright, this video would be focused on gaming, but I also wanted to touch on the other aspects afterwards, so stay tuned. And finally, I bought some PerfDog quotas because first, they still didn't get back to me, and second, there's no way to see real-time FPS on Android 15 without it. So we'll be testing 3 very demanding games here. First is Arena Breakout, which a lot of you requested. So as usual, we're starting from a 100% battery plugged in, which we're gonna unplug and measure the starting screen temperature. Now it's at a cool 30 degrees both top and bottom. It's worth noting that last year the POCO X6 Pro brought tremendous performance jump in the $300 range, and temperature was still considered good at below 43 degrees max. So let's keep that in mind as we move forward. Now as far as settings is concerned, I turn on Wild Boost or gaming mode on all the games here. And also, since this is my first foray with Arena Breakout, I'm very happy to see 120 Hz and maximum graphics setting, but I went further and turned on super high resolution and ultra resampling as well. Basically, we're stress testing this phone to see its limits, and please forgive my newbie hands as I barely have time to pick up a new game. So we're playing the starter match here, Farm Secure Ops, and let's check it out. So first of all, I was very surprised that even with the built-in MIUI performance monitor, the real-time FPS is just not there. But I'm still going to keep it on so you can see the chip temperature reported in real time. And of course, we're starting off at a cool 34 degrees. And again, I'll use a controller to reduce movement on the phone itself so you can see the stats better. Though I'll occasionally touch the phone because I inconveniently cannot run with a stick. But anyway, what we're seeing here is a solid 120 FPS frame rate almost 7 minutes into the game. Only when looting and opening menus did the frame rate go down to 60, which is perfectly understandable as there's no need to keep that high frame rate. And in general, things have been running very smooth, with the chip touching 40 degrees around 4 minutes in the match, or 6 minutes since starting up the game. I gotta say the graphics here is so good, especially how they render the water and how it reflects light for a mobile game that is, which is why the temperature kept going up until almost 7 minutes in match. The chip passed 43 degrees Celsius, where we finally see the game drop its target FPS briefly to 90, then settling at 60 FPS for the rest of the game. Just keep an eye on the graph above the phone because we are going to refer to it a lot. But honestly speaking, this is very stable performance, which is great to see. Now, since I'm only recording at 60 FPS, you will able to see lags if it goes under 60, but not above that. So we have to go by the PerfDog graph in this game. And so far the temperature is stable at under 43 degrees Celsius, which is great. And there's actually a setting where you can force the 120 FPS. So it depends on your needs and whether you're using a cooling fan or not. It doesn't need it because personally, I think 60 FPS at max graphics is a good middle ground, but you can actually push the phone even more with that cooling fan. And considering the price, color me impressed. What I also like was the skin temperature, or to be exact, the screen temperature that I measured. It's now at 40 degrees top and 37 degrees bottom. Battery is similar to the chip at 42 degrees Celsius, and so far we used a mere 3% battery, or about 18% per hour. And later I'll show a charging graph for the 90 watt system, so lots of exciting new data. I'm going to do the same with upcoming phones as well, so subscribe to not miss them and hit the thumbs up if you appreciate it so far. Alright, now we're done with Arena Breakout. Let's immediately move on to Honkai Star Rail, and I'll set the setting at very high preset, with the only other change made is to 60 FPS. And as you can see, we actually do have an FPS graph on the gaming plugin like most other phones, but to be honest, they lag a little bit behind and I cannot really do anything to the game with it open, which is alright for HSR because it can autoplay, but for other games not so much. So specifically in this game, we can see how it compares to the PerfDog graph, which is actually pretty consistent, just lags a little bit behind. Okay, so we're farming equipments here for my Castris with the help of my friend's Castris, so Thank you, friend. Basically, the trend here is the temperature does raise, but it flattens out at just under 45 degrees throughout the whole fight scenes. As you can see, the stark difference to the previous game is there are fluctuations and frame drops all over the place. In the first 3 minutes, the game still tries to hit that 60 FPS cap, but it just couldn't do that, so afterwards it lowers down to the 45 FPS range. Though still fluctuating, it does fare slightly better, and especially when the fight goes rough, when the AoE skills are affecting multiple opponents at the same time, you can see it drop further to 30 FPS, and you'll see this time and time again, especially in our next fight with a weekly boss which is more flashy. Basically, aside from loading screens and menus, we're hovering around that 30-40 FPS range, but then it ends up at 30 FPS at the end. Temperatures wise, it's pretty much 45 degrees at all times, and this is on the chip side, and I'm playing in an air-conditioned room here in the studio around 26 degrees, just to note there. So finally, we ended up the 10-minute session with 45 degrees on the battery, same as the chip temperature. And what's amazing is on the outside, we're only sitting at 40 degrees top and 40 degrees bottom, which speaks volume to how good the new cooling system that they put here. And I can surely say the X7 Pro will eat HSR at 30 FPS maxed out with around 5% battery usage every 10 minutes, or projected up to 30% per hour, which is in line with the past results as well. Finally, let's move on to the game that I've been pouring my hours and life into lately, and that is Wuthering Waves. The updates in this game has been crazy. I still remember the Galaxy S24 Ultra gives out a lot of sub 20 FPS gameplay. It was so laggy. So we'll see how it goes here. And as always, we're maxing out the preset to quality and set the FPS to 60. Now, as you can see, as I approached the enemy and started doing combos, it started off around 45 FPS, which quickly dropped to 23 FPS when Jinxi's dragon comes in. Only about 30 seconds, the game tried to churn as many frames as possible, but it couldn't. So it dropped down to 30 FPS and basically stayed there solid. And the temperature is in check as well, around 45 degrees throughout the whole gameplay. Of course, as time goes on, we see more fluctuations, and there are times where the chip cools down to below 44 degrees, then the frame rate jumps back up to 45 FPS, then it goes back down after hitting the temperature limit again. But other than that, there are no huge frame drops. Even when running and flying around Renacita, you don't see extreme fluctuations, which makes for an overall smooth gameplay. Except for the very last part, I tried to fight world enemies. It actually fluctuated more than usual, but that's probably because it was trying to hit the higher frame rate. Because the phone was below 44 degrees, it tries to reach like 45, but it can't because I'm fighting. So my tip is to reduce these frame rate jumps. I would highly recommend playing at 30 FPS instead, which again at this $300 price range is very, very impressive. We're maxing out the graphics here, and Solid devised this phone position as a 30 FPS performer for graphically intensive games, or 60 FPS for first-person shooter games. Or of course, if you play Honor of Kings, PUBG, and COD Mobile, you're gonna hit max 120 FPS, no problem. What surprised me in this test is how Wuthering Waves becomes the relatively easier game to run, as we are at 43 degrees on the battery, same as the chip, and on the screen side 40 degrees top and 38 degrees bottom. That's just insane. Battery usage wise, we ended up the test at 88%, so around 4% usage since the last time, which projects to around 24% per hour of gaming. And honestly, the X7 Pro never ceased to surprise me, because I still remember the last year's model was still a little bit hot around 42-43 degrees, and the F6 throttled a bit, although not as bad as the 8 Gen 1 days. But now, all problem is gone. So with that said, here's an overview of the 3 games tested. And let's focus on the smooth metric here, or the green line in the graph. For games to be considered smooth, it has to be under 8, which means Arena Breakout passed the test with flying colors. No questions there. Then HSR goes all over the place, though because you are not actively moving the characters, it doesn't feel as bad. And keep note that setting the frame rate to 30 FPS will solve the issue, as you can see towards the end of the graph, so that's your recommendation there. And finally, I think Wuthering Waves is playing very, very well. Still passing the under 8 smooth score recommendation from PerfDog, with the only problem is the phone can't really reach 60 FPS at all, or even sustain 40 FPS in that case. So it's best to stay at 30 FPS if you want to play at the highest graphic preset, but otherwise, this has been an extremely impressive showcase, and I cannot stop saying that because this is something you don't see on a spec sheet. So I hope that gives you a good idea of what to expect. Okay, now let's move on to the 90-watt charging speed test. This phone has 6,000 mAh battery, which is great and on par with the flagships out there. Let's check out the graph and break it down right now. So first things first, we're starting off with 1% charge all the way up to 100%. And within the first minute, you can see it's trying to slowly step up the power, and afterwards reaching a peak 60 watts, then gave a brief moment of 50 watts and slowly goes down. So by the 8 minutes mark, it stabilizes around 30 watts all the way through until 1 hour mark, where basically it charges fully. We got almost 30% charge within the first 10 minutes, then 70% after 30 minutes. It does take a tiny bit above 1 hour to fully recharge, but the most important thing is you get most of it within the first 30 minutes. And we're talking 6,000 mAh battery here. But it doesn't stop there. What really impressed me this time around is the charging temperature that never went above 40 degrees. Far from it actually. The peak charging temperature was 36 degrees Celsius at the bottom of the screen, and that's something I gotta give props to Xiaomi and POCO, at which point I can definitely say fast charging does not degrade your battery. Just turn it on in the settings because it's off by default. And for your note, again, I did the test in a typical 27 degrees room temperature that's in my living room. Honestly speaking, these things alone already makes the X7 Pro a must consider at $300 range. The 50 megapixel main camera with 8 megapixel ultra wide takes good pictures. I think they improved the colors a lot these days, as you can see from these sample shots. The 1.5K AMOLED screen looks great, and for the first time there's IP68 water resistance as well, which gives extra peace of mind. They just keep on bringing the value. And interestingly, it's got next-gen Bluetooth 6.0 inside, which actually is my first time hearing one, so I'm excited to see what it has to offer. And if I'm allowed to nitpick on some things, it would be the bypass charging that's still absent from this phone. Also NFC that does not copy access cards. I really miss that when going from brands like Infinix, Vivo, or Honor. But in a good move from Xiaomi, the HyperOS setup page does not force you to install apps from the get-go anymore. Though pre-installed apps are still a thing, but you can just delete them easily. And don't forget to disable notifications from themes, games, browser, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so welcome everyone to the video test, everyone. Right now we are recording with the front camera of the POCO X7 Pro. And what do you think of the video quality as well as the stabilization here? I'm trying to just hand hold it within arm's length, and yeah, this is what it looks like so far in the screen. It looks actually very, very good. But let's move on to the back camera now and we'll see how it will look like. Alright, so I hope I am in frame here, and this is the back camera of the POCO X7 Pro. What do you think of the video quality? Is it so much better than the front camera? And also check out the stabilization. And yeah, with that said, that's gonna be it for my POCO X7 review. Again, I really hope it helps. Subscribe for more phones review in the future. I'm actually reviewing one new phone right here, so yeah, stay tuned for that. And yeah, basically that's gonna be it. Here are 2 more videos for you to check out, and thank you so much for watching. I'm Kenneth, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.